Hello guys, welcome to Nursery Tutelage. In today's lesson, we will be analyzing quantitative data. So we would focus our attention on regression analysis. That is the method that we are going to be using to analyze quantitative data. I would entreat you to follow this particular lesson with keen interest. And by so doing, you would be able to write the regression equation, identify significant and insignificant variables, as well as interpret these variables. Before we begin today's lesson, I would entreat you to subscribe to Nursery Tutelage. Turn on the notification button so you don't miss out on any of our comprehensive lessons. So we begin our lesson by trying to understand what regression analysis is all about. When we talk of regression analysis, it is a method that is used to establish relationship between variables. So if you conduct a research, one way that you can analyze it is the regression analysis method, where you would try to establish relationship between the data that you've collected on the research. So if you collected data for your research on academic performance, and your research tried to find out the factors that affects or influences academic performance, the regression analysis method will help you to use the data that you've collected to establish relationship between the variables. All right. So for us to achieve our goal of writing the regression equation, identify significant and insignificant variables, and also giving interpretation to these variables, we are going to be using a case study to help us do that. So this is the case study. It says a manager wanted to expand the operation of his firm, but he was however wondering if the expansion would be profitable. So the research department sampled 232 firms and they collected data on their profit levels. And their research focused on the number of branches, the age of the firm, the education of the manager, and the number of employees. So these are the areas that they collected data on to see if these areas has any relationship or influence on the profit level. Okay, and the results estimated is data using regression model. So we are to study the results and answer the questions. So this is the results of the study. We have the profit level, which is the subject matter. Because here the profit level is what the research was all about. The research was conducted to see if these factors has any impact on profit level. So these are the factors: the number of branches, the age of firm, and so on. And this is the results. And then we also have our p-value and other ones. So first things first, we want to know what the significant, we want to know the dependent and independent variables. That's the first thing we want to find out. Which is the dependent variable and which is the independent variable. That's what we want to do. So for us to be able to identify the significant and insignificant variable, we first need to know what a dependent variable is and what an independent variable is. So a dependent variable is what we are trying to predict in a research, and the independent variables are the factors that will predict what we are trying to predict. It's kind of funny. So if you are conducting a research to predict academic performance then becomes your dependent variable. meaning that all your research is depending on this particular variable. Without this particular variable, there will be no research. Okay. And the independent variables will be, say, factors like coming for lectures, doing assignments, paying attention in class. These will be the independent variables because they will help us to predict our what? Dependent variable. So that's the meaning of dependent and independent variable. In short, a dependent variable is what the research is centered on, or what the research is trying to what? Establish or gain understanding or knowledge on. And the independent variables are the factors that what help you to predict the dependent variable. So taking this particular scenario, the manager wanted to expand his firm, but he wanted to first know if the expansion would be profitable. So his main focus was on profitability. So a research was conducted on 232 firms to gather information on their what profit levels, on their profit levels. And if you want to know the profit level of any firm, there are a lot of things that you can look at. You can look at their budget. You can also look at their profit for a year and other factors. But this particular research decided to just look at the number of branches of that particular or those particular what firms. Okay, the research also looked at the age of the firm, the education of the manager, the person in charge, how old is he, and the number of employees. How many employees do they have to work for them? So the research on this was trying to find out if these factors actually has any impact on what profit levels. So in all this scenario, we can see that the dependent variable is what? Profit level, because the research was conducted what? To find or to gather information on factors that what? Predicts profit levels. So our dependent variable is profit level because it is the reason why the research was conducted. Okay. And the independent variables will be the number of branches, the age of firm, education of manager, and number of employees. Because these factors will help us to predict what? The profit levels. To help us to know if the number of branches, if having more branches will impact your profit level, and so on. So the profit level will be our dependent variable, and these factors will be our independent variable because the research is depending on the profit level. Okay, so let's look at this scenario and see if we did understood the meaning of dependent and independent variable. So this is another scenario. They say inflation has persistently been high in Ghana. The Bank of Ghana has asked you to conduct a study to estimate the magnitude of the various factors causing inflation in the country. The factors that you consider when you're doing your research were GDP, interest rates, and imports. So in this scenario, what will be our dependent variable? Let's see if you got it correct. So our dependent variable will be what? Inflation, because inflation is what this particular research was trying to predict. And the factors that would predict the inflation are GDP, interest rate, and imports. So this then becomes our independent variables because the research is not depending on these variables, but rather these variables will help us to predict what? Our dependent variable, which is what? Inflation. So that's it for dependent and independent variable. Dependent variable is what the research is trying to predict, and the independent variables are the ones that are the predictors. Okay. So now we want to know the significant and insignificant variables of this particular research. And we have to use a significance level of 0.05. So basically there are three significant levels when you want to find out which variables are significant. We have the 0.01, we have the 0.05 and the 0.10. Okay, so the 0.01 sometimes may also be written as the 99th percent. Okay, the writing is not that visible. The 99%. Okay, and the 0.05, this one can also be known as the 5%. So in case they write 0.05, it is the same as the 5%. And we also have the we also have the 0 point. We also have the 0.10, the 0.10. Okay, no problem with this one. I hope you can refer to it anytime soon. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there are three significance levels. There is 0.01, 0.05 and 0.10. So when you are given a 0.01 significance level, it means that for you to identify your significance level, variables that has a coefficient or has values that are less than 0.01 are significant, and any variable that has a value of more than 0.01 is insignificant. Okay, same for the 5th% significance level. If we want to find out the variables that are significant using this particular significance level that we've been given, that's 0.05, it means that we have to look at the p-values of the various independent variables that are less than what, 0.05 or equal to 0.05. Those variables will be our significant variables, and the variables that has a p-value of more than 0.01 would be our insignificant variables. To put that into context, when you are finding the significant variables and the insignificant variables, you have to look at the p-value. Okay, so let your attention come to the p-variable. Don't look at the coefficient or the standard error. When you are finding which variables are significant and which ones are insignificant, come straight to the p-value and use that as your look upon for the variables that are significant. So we look at the number of branches. The number of branches has a p-value of what? 0.46. So this will be an insignificant variable because looking at the significance level that we've been given, we have to use the 0.05. So because the p-value of number of branches is 0.46, which is more than 0.05, it means that this particular variable is insignificant. Okay,